It is really great to have you with us again today.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. I'm excited for this one.
Me too. So today we are looking at a really fascinating clinical presentation, a slide deck, actually titled Rhythmical Oncology Care. And we're going to follow the slides pretty closely today because they map out something incredible.
They really do. It's a complete paradigm shift for end-of-life care.
Okay, let's unpack this
Yeah.
because I want you to imagine, just for a second, that someone you love is in the advanced stages of cancer.
Right.
Their body is just utterly exhausted. Their reserves are totally depleted. And I mean, what they need more than anything else in the world right then is physical comfort.
Exactly, just basic physical relief.
But here is the excruciating bind that families and caregivers find themselves in, right? Traditional physical therapies, the exact things we usually turn to for pain or stiffness, they're often just way too harsh for a profoundly frail body.
Yeah, they can actually do more harm than good.
And since you follow advanced oncology care closely, you probably already know about the taboo around deep tissue massage in these palliative settings. The sheer mechanical force of it risks secondary injury. So caregivers are left, like, paralyzingly afraid to even touch their loved ones for fear of making the suffering worse.
That is really the central agony of palliative oncology. I mean, the very touch that is meant to soothe can actually trigger a cascade of structural or neurological damage, especially when a body is already compromised by, cachexia or advanced metastasis.
Which is just heartbreaking.
It is, but the presentation you brought to us today, it maps out a remarkably elegant way out of this paradox.
Yeah, it introduces this specialized, highly recommended clinical alternative called Rhythmical Einreibung, or RE.
Right, RE. And what you're going to do today is dissect the exact physiological and psychological mechanisms that allow this therapy to provide a completely safe, holistic path to soothe and protect cancer patients without causing even a fraction of harm.
So let's start with that caregiver's dilemma, because the presentation frames this as three overlapping circles of restriction.
Mm-hmm.
First, you have the patient's extreme frailty. I mean, their stamina is basically non-existent.
They have nothing left in the tank.
Right. Second, there's this desperate need for relief from physical suffering, but you can't resort to more invasive procedures or, just add more heavy narcotics to their system.
Right, because their organs are already struggling to process the medications they have.
Exactly. And third, you have that traditional taboo we just mentioned. Deep tissue manipulation is explicitly contraindicated because, your muscles have to actively recover from the micro tears of a standard massage.
Yeah, it's a workout for your tissues.
And a palliative patient simply does not have the metabolic energy to heal from their own therapy.
Which is exactly why Rhythmical Einreibung was developed as a direct contrast to traditional mechanical massage. If we look at the slides and break down the mechanics of R, it relies entirely on light surface stroking.
What the medical field calls effleurage, right?
Exactly, effleurage. And it couples that with a continuous, predictable, rhythmic gliding. But the defining clinical characteristic here, and this is so important, is that this entire process happens exclusively on the epidermal layer.
Just the very surface of the skin.
Just the surface. There is absolutely zero deep tissue manipulation. So no muscle kneading, no friction, and no physical downward pressure whatsoever.
Wow.
Yeah. Instead of relying on mechanical force to, physically manipulate the tissue, RE utilizes therapeutic botanical oils. It actively harnesses the pharmacology of specific plant extracts combined with the physics of rhythm.
Looking at the methodology in the slides, the best way I can kind of conceptualize what this actually feels like for the patient is thinking about energy exchange.
Okay, I like that.
Because if a traditional deep tissue massage is like a strenuous physical workout where your body is forced to push back, engage, and sort of adapt to the pressure, RE hits much more like passively floating in a warm pool.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. It demands absolute zero energy expenditure from the person receiving it.
What's fascinating here is if we take that warm pool analogy a step further, the real key is the passive absorption. Because there's no mechanical shear stress applied to the fascia or the muscles, RE conforms perfectly to the exact limits of the frail patient's current tolerance.
It never asks the body to do any work.
Never. It never asks the compromised body to adapt to the therapy. The therapy inherently adapts to the body. And this absolute lack of physical demand is the specific reason RE isn't just considered like a pleasant alternative. It is actually the exclusively recommended standard for palliative care environments.
Because it's so safe.
Exactly. It mathematically guarantees oncology safety by just completely removing the variable of force.
Okay, so we have this zero impact methodology. But as you follow the slides and dig into the claims of the source material, a massive question immediately jumps out.
I think I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, I mean, if we know that RE is entirely superficial, that it's just lightly gliding across the epidermis, what exactly does this gentle stroking do to a physical body that is literally breaking down? The presentation actually transitions here from the physical application to its direct somatic impact, which they call the first of three interconnected dimensions of whole person healing.
And to understand that somatic impact, we really have to look at the neurology of a chronically ill patient. The first dimension, the physical body, focuses heavily on somatic relief.
Okay.
And one of the most striking physiological benefits the text highlights is dispelling the deep cold.
The deep cold, that sounds so visceral.
It is. In advanced oncology, patients aren't just feeling chilly because the room is drafty. We are talking about a profound metabolic shutdown. When mobility ceases and vitality drops, peripheral blood flow restricts.
So their extremities just stay freezing.
Exactly. That cold settles deep into the bones, creating this pervasive, freezing ache that basically blankets the entire body.
And because you can't just, throw a heavy, suffocating lead blanket on a frail patient to warm them up, the therapeutic oils used in IE serve a very specific purpose.
Right, they carry a botanical warmth.
Yeah, a botanical warmth that penetrates the epidermal layer to counter that chilling metabolic restriction. But the warmth is really only half the equation, right?
That's right.
Because the presentation also claims this completely superficial touch soothes chronic pain and softens profound joint stiffness. Wait, here's where it gets really interesting, but also a bit confusing for me.
Go ahead.
If there's absolutely zero deep pressure, how is it physically possible to soften a rigid, locked joint? Like, how does grazing the skin relax a deep muscle? I have to push back on that.
And that is completely fair. It seems like a total contradiction if you are only looking at the body through a mechanical lens, which, by the way, is the exact hurdle traditional physical therapists face when they first encounter RE.
Oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely. You have to shift your perspective from a mechanical framework to a neurological one. Think about the etiology of that stiffness in a palliative patient. A joint isn't locked because the muscle is suddenly too short. It's locked because of a protective guarding mechanism. The body is in a state of severe chronic pain, so the central nervous system essentially locks the surrounding musculature to armor itself against further agony.
Oh, wow. It's bracing for impact.
Exactly. It's an armor. And if a practitioner tries to push into that guarded muscle with deep pressure, what happens?
The nervous system detects a threat and fights back.
Precisely. The guarding intensifies.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. The stiffness is an active alarm state. It's not a structural failure.
Yes.
So by staying strictly on the epidermal layer and maintaining that perfectly predictable, continuous rhythm, the practitioner is essentially bypassing the muscle entirely and speaking directly to the peripheral nervous system.
That is exactly it. The continuous, unbroken rhythm provides a steady stream of non-threatening sensory input. It acts as a localized interference to the persistent pain signals that are traveling up the spinal cord.
It's like it changes the channel.
Basically, yeah. It signals the nervous system that the immediate environment is safe. And that allows the brain to finally power down that rigid protective guarding.
Wow.
So the stiffness softens from the inside out. And the secondary benefit of this neurological unwinding is that it actively counters extreme fatigue.
Because they aren't flexing all the time.
Exactly. The patient's nervous system is no longer burning massive amounts of caloric energy just to keep the muscles locked in a state of hypervigilance. So it actually injects vital, soothing power back into the body without draining their fragile reserves.
So you aren't forcing the door open with a crowbar. You're just like systematically convincing the nervous system to unlock the deadbolt itself.
That is a perfect way to put it.
And this localized neurological piece creates a biological domino effect. Because once that peripheral guarding drops and the nervous system stops treating the body like a war zone, the relaxation cascades inward.
Yes, it moves deeper.
Which brings us to the second dimension detailed in the slides, life functions, or the synchronization of the body's disordered biological rhythms.
And this is where the science of RE becomes incredibly sophisticated. We are moving from soothing, stationary skeletal muscles to actively regulating the patient's autonomic internal systems.
The automatic stuff.
Right. When a human body is severely ill, its internal natural rhythms become chaotic. The source material introduces this fascinating concept of external touch acting as a biological metronome.
A metronome, like for keeping time in music.
Yes, because the skin is developmentally derived from the exact same embryonic tissue as the nervous system. Applying a rhythmic external stimulus to the skin deeply influences internal autonomic functions.
That is wild. And following the slides, they focus on 4 specific biological rhythms that this metronome effect helps to synchronize. The first one is respiration. In advanced cancer, you frequently see rapid, shallow, or labored breathing dyspnea, air hunger, that terrifying feeling of not being able to catch your breath.
It's one of the most distressing symptoms.
Absolutely. And the steady, rhythmic gliding of R on the skin acts as an external guide. It literally offers a stable tempo for the brainstem's respiratory center to latch onto, which helps that erratic, panicked breathing settle back into a smooth, even cadence.
It's incredible. And following right behind respiration is the synchronization of sleep. The sources make a really critical distinction here. R doesn't just act as a sedative to make the patient drowsy.
Right.
It significantly improves sleep architecture. When a palliative patient tries to sleep, their rest is usually highly fragmented by pain spikes and anxiety.
And just can't get comfortable.
Yeah, their brain stays trapped in these light, vigilant sleep stages. But because Rhi has quieted those persistent pain signals at the somatic level, the brain is finally granted the neurological safety required to descend into genuine restorative deep wave sleep.
Which they desperately need. And then the third rhythm the therapy regulates is digestion.
Yeah.
It relieves the severe gastrointestinal discomfort and stagnation caused by long-term immobility. Because, without movement, gut motility just grinds to a halt.
It just stops, yeah.
And finally, the fourth rhythm is circulation warming the extremities and gently promoting systemic blood flow. But crucially, doing so without putting any extra demand or strain on the failing heart.
Exactly.
But wait, looking at these 4 internal rhythms, respiration, sleep, digestion, circulation, how does touching the surface of the back or the legs actually alter gut motility or a heart rate? What is the physical bridge between the skin and the stomach?
The bridge is the vagus nerve and the parasympathetic nervous system.
Okay.
Chronic illness locks a patient in a state of sympathetic dominance. That's the classic fight, flight, or freeze response. Heart rate is up, breathing is shallow, and digestion shuts down because the body is prioritizing immediate survival.
Right, it doesn't care about digesting lunch if it thinks it's dying.
Exactly. So the continuous, predictable rhythm of RE strongly stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest and digest mode.
I see.
By creating an external rhythm that is flawlessly steady, the vagal tone increases. The brain releases acetylcholine, the heart rate naturally slows, bronchial tubes relax, and the digestive tract is signaled to resume peristalsis.
So what does this all mean? It's almost like the patient's internal organs are a panicked, out-of-sync orchestra.
I love that.
Because of the illness, every section is playing at a frantic, chaotic tempo. And the practitioner's rhythmic gliding on the skin acts as the conductor, just slowly waving a baton at a steady, undeniable pace until eventually the lungs, the stomach, and the heart all naturally fall back into a harmonious tempo.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that orchestra analogy beautifully captures the clinical reality, especially because a conductor doesn't actually play the instruments.
Oh, that's true.
The brilliance of rhythmical Einreibung is that this massive internal regulation is achieved completely passively. The conductor gets the orchestra back in sync, restoring the patient's foundational biological vitality without the patient having to consciously exert a single ounce of effort.
It's just amazing.
It provides profound, life-sustaining support for a failing biological system purely through sensory entrainment.
And that physiological entrainment paves the way for the final and, frankly, I think the most profound dimension of this whole person healing model.
Absolutely.
We've moved from the physical epidermis to the internal organs, and now the slides take us into dimension 3, psychology and soul.
Yeah.
Because once the physical pain is soothed and those internal biological rhythms are humming smoothly again, the patient is finally freed from the constant deafening noise of bodily distress.
They finally get a break.
Right. And that physical unburdening is what makes the most crucial aspect of palliative care possible. Psychological and spiritual peace.
It is nearly impossible to overstate the sheer psychological terror that accompanies advanced oncology. The sources specifically highlight RE's capacity for mitigating fear.
Mm.
There is a deeply acute anxiety associated not just with the unknown of dying, but with the immediate loss of bodily control. Your body is deteriorating, it is doing things you cannot stop, and it has essentially become a cage of suffering.
That is so heavy.
It is. And the tactile, predictable rhythm of RE provides a profound grounding presence. It pulls the patient's consciousness out of that spiral of terror and anchors them back into a sensation of safety in the present moment.
The presentation also emphasizes how this specific type of nonverbal physical comfort smooths depression.
That phrase really caught my attention.
Yeah, it's very descriptive.
Because the isolation of chronic illness is just crushing. You are trapped in a clinical bed, surrounded by the sterile beeping of machines, and almost every touch you receive from another human being has a medical agenda.
Right, you're being poked, prodded, turned, or injected.
Exactly. So to receive a touch that has absolutely no diagnostic agenda, a touch whose sole purpose is pure, unadulterated comfort, it shatters that deep clinical isolation.
This is where we see the concept of dual stress release fully operationalized.
Dual stress.
Yeah, in Western medicine, we often mistakenly treat the mind and the body as two completely separate entities. But the reality is that the mind and the physical nervous system are totally inextricably bound. Right, they feed off each other.
Exactly. You cannot have a terrified, despairing mind inside a relaxed body, just as you cannot have a peaceful, transcendent mind inside a body that is actively racked with unmanaged pain.
It's a loop.
RE recognizes this unity. It simultaneously unburdens both. It treats the physical symptom and the psychological distress as one unified experience of suffering.
It completely reframes the nature of the intervention. I really marvel at the phrasing the source material uses here. The text actually calls the application of RE the transmission of deep emotional reverence.
That is a beautiful way to say it.
It really is. Think about that for a second. It shifts from a medical treatment to a profound act of human dignity.
Yeah.
It's about creating what the authors define as an invisible protective net.
The imagery of that invisible protective net perfectly synthesizes the entire three-dimensional biopsychosocial spiritual model of RE. You are taking the botanical warmth of the therapeutic oils, which physically grounds the somatic body, and weaving it together with the rhythmic safety of the effleurage, which physiologically calms the internal biological systems.
And together.
Together, those elements create a literal and figurative net that holds the frailest, most vulnerable patients in a state of absolute safety.
Wow.
In the final stages of life, when curative medicine has reached its limits, this restoration of personal wholeness and dignity becomes the ultimate clinical goal. The therapy constructs a true, tangible sanctuary of inner peace during the most difficult transition a human being can face.
It is an incredibly powerful paradigm shift for palliative care.
It really is.
As we wrap up this deep dive, let's briefly retrace the journey these slides took us on today. We started with that agonizing caregiver's dilemma, a heartbreaking scenario where an exhausted cancer patient desperately needs physical relief, but the sheer frailty of their body makes traditional deep tissue touch a massive liability.
Right. And from there, we unpacked the clinical alternative. Rhythmical Einreibung, a highly calibrated science of zero-impact soothing that operates on the precise principle of requiring zero energy expenditure from the patient.
It's absolutely passive.
Exactly. By strictly utilizing continuous surface gliding and the pharmacology of botanical oils rather than mechanical shear force, it ensures absolute safety.
We then tracked how this gentle, superficial intervention creates a massive physiological cascade across three distinct dimensions. First, on the somatic level, where it dispels the deep metabolic cold and fundamentally alters how the nervous system guards against chronic pain. Second, on the biological level, where it acts as an external metronome, stimulating the vagus nerve to resynchronize erratic breathing, fragmented sleep, and stalled digestion.
Right.
And finally, the spiritual dimension, where that unified physical relief mitigates the profound fear of loss of control, weaving that invisible protective net of reverence and dignity around the patient.
And for you listening, as someone deeply invested in the quality of oncology care, the source material offers a very clear, actionable path forward.
What's the next step?
They invite caregivers and medical professionals to begin this dignified journey of relief by reviewing their dedicated clinical service manual. Specifically, they direct attention to the chapters detailing palliative and advanced oncology support.
Okay, that makes sense.
Their unwavering promise is that by adopting this rhythmic methodology, you can provide the safest, most profoundly comforting care for a vulnerable patient, while finally offering caregivers a way to safely touch and soothe their loved ones without fear.
And, as you look at the sheer biological and psychological impact of this therapy, it leaves you with a profound, lingering question to explore on your own.
Oh, what's that?
Well, it makes you wonder, if this rhythmic, zero-impact touch can so completely reset the deeply locked nervous system of someone in the most advanced terminal stages of oncology,
Hmm.
what untapped revolutionary potential does this modality hold for treating non-terminal traumas?
Oh, that is an interesting thought.
Right. Imagine applying this exact science to patients suffering from severe PTSD or profound systemic burnout, where the nervous system is similarly locked in a state of unyielding chronic alarm, just waiting for a signal of safety to finally let go.
It is a fascinating frontier for the future of nervous system regulation, truly. Thank you so much for exploring this profound science with us today.
Yes. Thank you for joining us. We wish you well. Until the next deep dive. Take care.